Okay, so fair warning, I'm probably going to talk a lot about Batman in this video, so if that weirds you out, just a heads up. But with that said, hello everybody! Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another one of our weekly Moriarty the Patriot discussion video. Today we're here to talk all about episode 19, The White Knight of London, Act 1. But before we get into the video proper, quick reminder if you haven't done so yet, to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, set notifications to all, let all of AniTube know that you're here. Let's go ahead and set a like goal this week. Let's set it at 100 likes. Let's try to get to that 100 like goal before the end of the day. I believe in you guys. We're gonna try anyway. But with that said, let's go ahead and jump into this week's episode. And we are going to be talking, of course, about Adam Whiteley. Wow. It just connected that his name is Adam Whiteley. Whiteley, as in the White Knight of London. Oh, wow. I don't know how I didn't see that. I would be a bad detective. But yeah, we're going to be talking about Adam. Adam Whiteley is honestly a pretty solid character. I was sort of put off at first, because at first I was like, okay, when I see the design, it's it's mostly blue, right? His design sort of looks like, not the face, just from the neck down. Sort of looks like Lestrade's design, when he first showed up, before you see him in the police outfit. I'm like, alright, he kind of looks like a Bobby, right? He looks like a cop. And I find that interesting, because it's okay. So blue in the show is pretty heavily associated with justice. So I was intrigued by that. But it didn't, jump out at me as, a particularly cool outfit, right? It's just sort of a blue outfit. He has a suit. It's not necessarily identical to the cops' outfits or anything. The cops' uniform, obviously they're uniforms, so they stand out more. But Whiteley is just sort of, a suit. It just looks nice in a blue suit with a blue tie, he looks like a guy. He just kind of looks normal. It's the neck up that intrigued me. And in particular, it's the well-groomed hair and the green eyes. It's definitely, if we might leap right into design time, it's very telling, because we see that Whiteley clearly gives a damn about how he looks. He's a well-dressed dude. His hair is well-groomed. And he clearly is, in some degree, exercising, because the dude is built. And he's able to tackle a mobster without getting a mouthful of fist. So he's clearly taking good care of himself. And that's important. Looks matter to him, but also being healthy matters to him. For what he's doing, he's aware that he needs to be, presentable, and he needs to be prepared to deal with certain situations. He's quick. He's quick on his feet. He's definitely of the, if we're comparing him to the rest of the cast, he's probably not as clever, but he is quick on his feet enough to notice that somebody was going to try to kill him with dynamite. So he is sharp, right? And I think that is hinted at in the design with the green eyes. Green in the show, from what we've seen, usually indicates a sort of greed, but with Whiteley, I don't see greedy. I see, I guess maybe to an extent. Everybody has this assumption that greed is bad, right? But there's not that much of a difference between greed and ambition, So, it's just two sides of the same coin. Ambition is good, greed is bad, right? So if we're looking at greed if we're looking at green as less of a black and white sort of angle to it, right? Where it's it always represents greed and greed is always bad. If we're not looking at it like that, and we're just looking at it as, instead of greed, ambition, right? And then it's the character that uses that ambition for good or bad. That's sort of what we get with Whiteley. He is cunning. He is ambitious, right? We know that he's cunning enough to be able to understand somebody just by looking at them, which is a very Sherlock trait, to understand most of a person's history just by glancing at them. Whiteley can sort of do that. It's not to the same extent. Again, he's not as clever as Will, he's not as deductive as Sherlock, but he is able to actually be quick on his feet. He's understanding how this Sherlockian universe works and his place in it, and he's able to sort of deduce how somebody feels about him just by the look on their faces, right? He can tell just by the look in someone's eye why they're there and what they're thinking of him. And on top of that, we know that he has high ambitions. He knows what he wants. He's going after it. And we do think it's like that. We do note that he is trying to allow all people to vote on who they want to represent them in Parliament. And obviously that's not going to make him a lot of fans with the House of Lords, but he's still ambitious and maybe foolish enough to try it. So I think the green eyes, very telling. And again, like the blue suit and tie, we've talked about this before, that it definitely is sort of indicating more of a justice thing. Because blue typically comes with a sense of justice, especially in Moriarty the Patriot. Most characters who have the blue hue to them, whether that's in their sort of like detective mode, right? Again, like Batman in the Arkham games. But whether they're in detective mode or whether that's just the clothing that they wear or perhaps their eye color, blue in the show is very often associated with justice. And the fact that Whiteley's suit is pretty much all blue, I think that just kind of further cements his stance that he is a just man, right? Like he is someone who he is seeking justice for the average person. Also with blue comes a lot of calm, right? Like the blue sort of brings out a calm feeling in most people who sort of see the color blue. Makes you feel nice, right? Makes you feel secure. It also comes with a lot of responsibility as a color. Again, I mentioned this in other videos. I don't think I've mentioned it in Moriarty the Patriot videos, but I will here. There is a reason why in Power Rangers, the Blue Ranger is almost always the second in command, because that's what you think of when you see blue. You think secure, you think responsible, calm. They're like, you know, the Red Ranger's always the leader, Blue Ranger's always the second in command. And there's a reason for that, because they both want justice, but Blue is a little bit more mature in their passion and search for justice. And that's why I think Whitley's suit is blue. It's funny to say that, you know, because it's like I can see why people think that I'm reaching most of the time, because it does seem like a reach, right? To just look at a character's suit and assume that you can deduce anything from that. But considering we're talking about Moriarty the friggin' Patriot, which is a show all about detective stuff, and the fact that, you know, obviously these character designers and these color design and art design, obviously they put in a ton of work into not only the character art but the background art. They want you to get they want you to be able to see these characters, see these places, and immediately understand what the character or setting is trying to convey. So I feel like it's kind of dismissive of some folk to just say like, oh, you're reading too far into it. Like, no, I do feel like you can actually learn a lot about Adam Whiteley just by looking at the design. He pretty much immediately just kind of gives you Erwin Smith vibes from Attack on Titan, just a sort of leader that you can believe in and follow. He actually vaguely gives me, and again, here comes the Batman stuff, Harvey Dent vibes, where he's this MP who's seeking justice. Again, he's sort of like Harvey Dent, right? Where Harvey Dent in the Batman mythos, whether that's the comics or the movies, whatever, Harvey's usually the same, where he's this, I believe he's like a DA, he's a district attorney of some kind, who's trying to take down the mob. And Whiteley here is trying to get the average person the right to vote, but in order to do that, he has to take down the mob, and he's a sort of government figurehead who is trying to do that. And he is seen by the people as sort of the white knight of his particular city. Instead of Gotham, now it's London, right? So it is interesting, the parallels. They even call him and the episode the White Knight of London. So I do find it interesting because Harvey Dent, prior to becoming Two-Face, is seen as sort of the White Knight of Gotham. And it's not just there that the Batman parallels end, because even with the Moriartys, especially Will and Al in particular, there is this sort of Batman vibe. In the Batman mythos, there's always this point where Bruce meets Harvey, and he actually feels like maybe he can give up being the Bat, right? Like maybe he doesn't have to be the Batman. Maybe he can let Harvey become the knight that Gotham needs. And with Will and Al, there's this moment where they sort of realize maybe they can just let Whiteley take over. because Whiteley seems to have the same goal, and he's going about it in a much more justice and not as murdery kind of way. And so Will and Al have this moment where they question, can they step aside and let Whiteley lead London into a brighter future? Can they trust this White Knight instead of continuing to be the Dark Knights of London? I almost said Gotham. But it's interesting. I really enjoyed that parallel between the Moriartys and Whiteley and Batman and Harvey Dent. I thought it was really, really cool. And it's interesting, too, because Will and Al, it's not like they're just willing to hand the keys over just because they hear he's a nice guy and he has the same mission. They do test him, right? Will and Al sort of stage this setup for Whiteley where when he arrives at this sort of gathering at this park opening, he's confronted by members of the House of Lords, who he is in pretty much direct competition with to try to get people the right to vote, but also the mayor, who has suddenly turned on him. And so instead of trying to be like, they're lying and blah, 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 like instead of getting defensive, he just goes, yeah, I did hold up the creation of this park, and I'm sure some of you are going to be annoyed by that. And I did know that the funds were coming from the House of Lords. I knew that. And that's all I have to say. So he doesn't like react in this big way. He doesn't necessarily allow them to insult him, but he does allow them to sort of paint him in a bad light, because he knows ultimately trying to get all defensive and all that's not going to help his case. So he just sort of takes the hit, right? And Moriarty and Will and Al, the Moriartys, are just sort of like, okay, that's pretty much the answer we were looking for, because they know he's not going to overreact and they know he's not out for himself. His honor is very much intact, which is funny because one of his handlers says, like, I'm so mad they insulted your honor, your honor, your integrity. And he's like, my honor? That's my honor. And you see like these kids who are going through this park and the park is all one level, right? It's all flat. So it's these kids who are wheelchair bound, like his brother Sam, who are now able to enjoy this park, and they're able to fly through it, right? They're not like they're not like being stuck either at the bottom or at the top of stairs. They're not like, you see them able to glide across, and they're not like they're not like having a bumpy ride, you know, like they're actually able to enjoy the park, and that's what Whiteley wanted. And that's the moment where Will and Al are like, okay, he's good. Like, they cleared him. They tried to test him. He passed, so he gets to know the big scoop, and that is that there is a connection between the mob and the House of Lords, which Whiteley very much had assumed that there's some connection to the mob, because otherwise why would this random mobster try to kill him? However, he didn't have the evidence, but Al did. Albert just hands him the evidence. And so now it does admittedly put Whiteley in a really tough spot, and both Moriarty brothers even say, like, this is kind of uncool because we're putting him right in the line of fire of the House of Lords and likely others as well. They don't know Milverton's there yet, but they're hoping that maybe, just maybe, Whiteley can actually manage to pull through and be the White Knight that London needs him to be. And it's funny, too, because as they're discussing this, the pair are, like, looking out at the park, but they see it as being on fire, right? Like, from their eyes, they see it on fire, and it's their job to extinguish it. I saw that scene in two ways. Like, the first scene was that we're seeing what London must look like to the Moriartys, this just fiery hellscape, right? That's one way to read it. Or the other way is that they want to set London on fire so that they can then burn it to the ground and then rebuild it. Either way, it's very much in line with William and Albert. Lewis, like aka our boy Lou, is definitely not the same way. I do think Lou is as smart. He's probably even like more capable in terms of hand-to-hand than the other two. But Al and Will are definitely more cunning than Lou. Lou is sort of an open book. But Will and Al sort of see London on fire at one point. And whether that's them saying that that's how they currently see it and they need to put it out, or it's them saying that we need to set London on fire and then burn it to ash and then rebuild from there. You know, we had like, on the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one. Wow, reference to a really bad X-Men movie. But they're not the only ones who are taking notice of our boy. They're not the only ones who see Whiteley. The other one who unfortunately gets involved is Milverton. And Milverton is about as clever as the others. Again, much like Whiteley, he's about as smart. I wouldn't put him on the same pedestal as, say, like Will or Sherlock or like even Mycroft. Maybe even Al, right? But I would put Milverton near them, right? Like, he's maybe on par with Al. Maybe. Maybe on par with Al. Definitely above characters like, say, Moran, Watson, Fred, stuff like that. He's definitely smarter than them, but I don't know if he's necessarily smarter than William. We'll have to wait and see. I don't think he's going to end up being smarter than Will or Sherlock, but I do think that he is pretty well aware of how to work the Whiteley problem, right? Like, because he gets contracted by the House of Lords, and he says, like, these idiots tried to kill him, which would have actually hurt them more because then Whiteley would have been a martyr for the sake of equality. That would have been dumb on their part. Meanwhile, for us, it's like, it would have been sad to see Whiteley go that soon, but yeah, these people deserve to have the right to vote. But Milverton's like, absolutely not. Like, Milverton's like, hell no. That was their mistake. Like, that was stupid. They could have actually lost everything. It's a good thing they hired me because I'm not going to be making those same mistakes. And we do know that, like, Milverton is much more interested in the backstage dealings. He's not really there to make himself present and known to everybody. Although we do see everybody bow to him when he walks in the room. But it's more that he's sort of operating from the shadows, right? Like, he's there, he's seeing everything, he does command a sort of sense of respect from people around him. However, he still is preferring to operate from the shadows, right? Like, he prefers blackmail, which we've talked about in the previous video, that he is sort of this, like, blackmailing evil genius. So it's more likely that he's going to try to dig up some dirt on Whiteley, or, as we see by the end of the episode, with those pretty intimidating looking goons, he's going to be systematically taking out weak points. Those weak points being the mobster who was linking the House of Lords to the assassination attempt. He has a cop kill that guy, and then he later kills that cop, which is kind of crazy. And then the second attempt to sort of take out weak points is, unfortunately, poor little Sam Whiteley, which is Adam's brother, who is also wheelchair-bound, like the children we see at the midpoint of the episode, the ones who Whiteley made the park for. His brother Sam is also wheelchair-bound, and he is the next target of those intimidating-looking dudes. Now, do I think they're going to kill Sam? I hope not, because he's just a boy. he's just a boy. I certainly hope they won't kill him. I think that'd be pretty intense of Milverton. But Milverton is, as we know, a bastard. So I wouldn't put it past him to send his goons there. And his goons don't look like they care who they kill as long as they're getting paid. They look like those types. But, yeah. Am I concerned for Sam? Yes. Am I positive he's gonna die? I'm like 60% sure Sam's probably gonna die next week. Which would send Adam over the edge, or Milverton's only going to be using Sam as leverage to get Adam to back off, right? Like, my guess is that either Milverton's going to find some dirt on Adam, or he's not going to be able to find any, so he'll then just kidnap Sam and use Sam as leverage to get him to stop this whole bill from passing. But that's pretty much it, though, everybody. That's just about all my thoughts on this week's episode of Moriarty the Patriot, so I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to boop that up snoot, share it if you care, leave a comment down below, don't forget to like, goal, all that fun stuff. And, of course, before we go, as always, I want to give a big, big thank you to the good folks in the T Squadron. Look at these beautiful people. look at all these beautiful names, and hey, if you would like to join these beautiful people, there are 2 ways to do so. The first, for just a single $1, is by hitting that Patreon link in the description, or you can check out the join button for just a little bit more, right beside that sub button. Either way, it is super, super appreciated. So once again, a big thank you to the good folks in the T Squadron. And yeah, that's it for me. I got it. Okay, so I was thinking about this before I go. I want to say this. I was thinking about this. I think that anime of the season, right? Because, like, I don't count sequels as anime of the season. I feel like that's kind of unfair. Because sequel, it would be Fruits Basket, right? But if we're counting just, like, new shows, or I guess Moriarty the Patriot isn't exactly a new show, is it? It's a leftover. Well, then that makes it easy. Moriarty the Patriot's the best leftover of this season. Okay, bye.